2 months before my wedding, my fiancé told me he needed space to think. 3 weeks later, he was engaged to my younger sister. Everyone expected me to scream, to cut her off, to make a scene at the family dinner where she finally worked up the courage to tell me herself. Instead, I smiled, wished them well, and asked one simple question. Have you set a date yet? They should have been more careful about what they were building their happiness on, because I already knew something they didn't, and I was willing to wait exactly as long as it took for the truth to matter. My name is Farah, and this is the story of the year my sister took my fiancé and what it actually cost her to keep him. I'm 32. My sister, Meherun, is 27. We grew up close, in the way sisters are close when there's only two of you and a lot of expectation pressed onto both your shoulders. Our parents ran a small textile business, and from an early age, Meherun and I both understood that family harmony mattered more than almost anything else in our house. I met Rayan 4 years ago through mutual friends. He was steady, funny in a quiet way, and good with my parents, which mattered a lot in a household like ours. We got engaged after 2 years together. Everyone was thrilled, Meherun especially. She helped plan the engagement party herself, cried happy tears, told me I'd found the perfect one. I believed her completely. That's important to understand because everything that came after only makes sense once you know how much I trusted her. It started small, the way these things usually do. Rayan began working late more often. He'd take calls in another room. When I asked about it, he said work was stressful, that a big project was consuming him. I didn't push. I trusted him. Around the same time, Meherun started coming around less. She used to visit our parents' house almost daily, but suddenly she was busy with a new job, always slightly evasive about details when I asked. I noticed it, filed it away, and didn't think much more of it, because why would I? My sister and my fiancé being distant from me at the same time felt like coincidence, not connection. 2 months before the wedding, Rayan sat me down and said he needed space. He used the word confused. He said he loved me but wasn't sure he was ready, that the wedding planning had made everything feel too fast, too real. I was devastated, but I didn't fight him on it. I told him to take the time he needed. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't find out for another 3 weeks, was that space to think meant space to be with my sister. Meherun told me herself at a family dinner in front of our parents. I think she believed doing it that way would make it harder for me to react badly. She said it gently, carefully rehearsed. She and Rayan had grown close during his time apart from me, that neither of them meant for it to happen, that she hoped I could eventually understand and forgive them. I sat there for a long moment. My mother looked like she might be sick. My father didn't say anything at all. I want to be honest about what I felt, because I think people expect fury in moments like this, and what I actually felt was something colder and more focused. I looked at my sister, the same sister who cried happy tears at my engagement party, and I understood all at once that those tears had probably never been entirely happy. I said, I hope you're both very happy. Then I finished my dinner and went home. Here is the part of the story I hadn't told anyone yet. 6 weeks before Rayan asked for space, I'd found something on our shared laptop, a financial account I didn't recognize, opened in his name, with deposits from a company that had absolutely nothing to do with his actual job. Curious and a little uneasy, I'd looked into it further. What I found was that Rayan had been quietly involved in a business scheme with a childhood friend, one that used falsified invoices to route money through a shell consulting firm, skimming a percentage of contracts from his actual employer along the way. I hadn't confronted him yet. I was still deciding how to handle it, still hoping there was an innocent explanation, still trying to protect the life I thought we were building together. I had saved everything. The account details, the invoices, message threads I'd found later, financial records that made the pattern impossible to explain away as coincidence. Then he asked for space, and 3 weeks later, my sister told me they were together. I realized something in that moment that changed how I saw the entire situation. Rayan hadn't left because he'd fallen for my sister out of nowhere. He'd left because our wedding and the shared finances that would come with it would have eventually put my name and my scrutiny directly next to a business relationship he desperately needed to keep hidden. Meherun was convenient. She was also, unknowingly, walking directly into the same risk I'd almost married into. I didn't tell my sister what I knew, not out of cruelty, though I understand if that's hard to believe, but because I genuinely wasn't certain yet how deep it went, and I wasn't going to hand her half a truth that she and Rayan could spin into Farah's bitter and making things up. Instead, I did something quieter. I consulted a lawyer, a family friend I trusted completely, and laid out everything I had. She confirmed what I suspected. What I'd found wasn't just ethically messy, it was likely criminal. Fraud, specifically, serious enough that if it surfaced formally, it could unravel Rayan's career and expose anyone financially entangled with him, including a spouse whose name ended up on shared accounts or property. I made a decision. I wasn't going to warn my sister. I wasn't going to protect her from a man I no longer had any obligation to protect anyone from. But I also wasn't going to be the one who set the fire. I decided to let their relationship and Rayan's own choices run their course, while quietly making sure that when the truth did surface, as these things eventually do, I would not be standing anywhere near the wreckage. I updated my own accounts. I made sure my name was fully removed from anything Rayan and I had shared during our engagement. I kept my documentation safe, dated and organized, not to use as a weapon, but as protection, in case anyone ever tried to claim I'd known and said nothing at a point when it still could have been prevented. Meherun and Rayan got engaged 4 months later. I attended the party. I hugged my sister. I shook Rayan's hand and wished him well, and I meant it in the strange, specific way you can mean well for someone while also knowing a storm is heading their way that has nothing to do with you. The wedding planning moved quickly. Quicker than mine had, actually. Meherun asked me at one point if I could help her look over some joint financial paperwork she and Rayan were setting up ahead of the wedding, since I understood that kind of thing better than she did. I told her, gently, that I thought it was best if she handled that with a professional she trusted, someone with no complicated history in the room. She seemed a little hurt, but she let it go. 6 weeks before their wedding, Rayan's employer launched an internal audit after an anonymous tip flagged irregularities in a string of vendor contracts. I didn't send that tip. I want to be completely clear about that. But I also wasn't surprised when it happened, because patterns like the one I'd found rarely stay hidden forever, especially once more people start touching the same shared accounts and asking their own questions. The investigation moved fast once it started. Rayan's role in the shell company scheme came out in full. Falsified invoices, skimmed contracts, 2 years of quiet fraud that had funded a lifestyle neither Meherun nor I had ever fully questioned. He was let go within weeks, facing potential legal consequences that were, by every account, serious. Meherun called me the night she found out, sobbing, asking how she was supposed to have known, asking if I'd had any idea. I told her the truth, carefully. I told her I'd found some concerning financial irregularities months before our own wedding was called off, that I hadn't been certain enough to make accusations at the time, and that once she and Rayan got together, I felt it wasn't my place to interfere in her relationship based on suspicions I hadn't fully confirmed. It wasn't the whole truth, and I know that, but it was true enough, and it was fair. I hadn't set out to destroy anything. I had simply refused to keep protecting a man who was never protecting me, and I hadn't extended a warning I had no obligation to give to a sister who hadn't extended me one either, back when it might have actually mattered. Meherun called off the wedding. She's rebuilding slowly, and our relationship is still finding its footing. Careful, quieter than it used to be, but not entirely broken. I don't think she'll ever fully understand why I didn't warn her sooner, and honestly, I've made peace with that. Some explanations only sound reasonable from the inside. Rayan is dealing with the legal fallout on his own now, exactly as he should be. I don't feel triumphant about any of it. I feel, mostly, like someone who finally stopped absorbing consequences that were never mine to carry. I've learned something from all of this. You can forgive people without protecting them, and sometimes the most honest thing you can do isn't to expose someone the moment you're hurt. It's to simply step back, let the truth take its natural course, and make sure that when it arrives, it doesn't find your name attached to it. If someone you loved chose someone else, and you later found out exactly why it wasn't the loss you thought it was, I want to hear about it in the comments. Subscribe for more real emotional stories every week. Suggested description. Copy She Called Me Sister. I waited. 2 months before my wedding, my fiancé asked for space. 3 weeks later, he was engaged to my sister. Everyone expected me to fight for him. Instead, I said nothing, because I already knew something about him that neither of them did, and I was willing to wait exactly as long as it took for the truth to catch up. Subscribe for more emotional, real-life betrayal stories every week. Has someone you loved chosen someone else, only for the truth to come out later? Share your story below.